Hey guys, welcome back. Okay, so this is part 4 in a whole series of tutorials that will teach you how to create professional specification drawings to accompany your fashion illustrations. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create a drag and drop library of design elements such as zips, pockets, collars, button stands, and much more, which we can then add to our specification drawings. Finally, I'm going to show you how to combine all of your silhouettes and your sleeves and your design details to quickly create hundreds of specification drawings or styles very quickly. Okay, so first of all, let's open up Adobe Illustrator and get started. Okay, so let's get started. As you can see here, I've already created a whole bunch of sort of, let's say, design details that we can then start adding to, let's say, our silhouettes, and we can even drag our sleeves in and start building these specification drawings based on the existing library content that we have. However, what I want to do is, in this tutorial, show you how to create these from scratch. So generally, the best idea is to start off with an existing template or an existing silhouette, like this one, for example. And as you can see, this silhouette has been transformed into a style just simply by adding pockets and bits and pieces and collars, etc. And that's what we're going to kind of do now. So to make things very simple, for this design especially, what I could do, so actually let's just replace this. Let's move it over so we can actually see where it is on the body and where we're going to be adding these details. So let's just move it into position. Okay, so let's create some basic pockets, or let's first of all create some, let's say, what is it? It's this like chevron detailing here and all the top stitching, etc. Really simple, and it's not something that you need to trace. You can just simply crack on with it. So I'm going to do is get my pen tool. I'm then going to make sure I have no fill. I'm going to make sure my line color is black, because obviously we're working with black. I'm also going to make this 0.5, and I can start adding, let's say, just a chevron detail here. And what I can do is I can get my small selection tool, or my big selection tool. I can click on this line. I can then go copy and paste, and I can then just move it into position, like so. We can zoom in just to make sure it's in the right location. And we can then just simply add a dashed line to this. We can then maybe even, so if I hold down the Option key on my keyboard, you get these little arrows. I can just click and drag that up, holding down the Shift key to lock it to the, let's say, vertical axis. I can then just simply duplicate it. And so there we have a chevron concept, and we have that lovely top stitching. So we can start adding bits and pieces like this. I could even create a pocket. So let's go for a circle. I'll go to my ellipse tool, and let's just create a circle. So I'm going to hold down Shift and Option on my keyboard and just click and drag out from the center. I can just move it into position, let's say here, and I could always then go to my cut tool. I could then just simply snip, delete that. And then to add a pocket, I could, let's add our pocket like this. I could just simply draw a line. So go to my line tool. I could just simply click and drag, and then let's make this 2 points. And we can remove that dashed line. And I can even, let's say, go for another line, zoom in, go really close to it, and then add a dashed line to this and make this 0.5 as well. So I'm adding a little bit of top stitching to this. And once again, I could just simply create a new line. So we have 2 lines of top stitching. And I could even, let's say, take, oh, hang on, let's zoom in again. I could even take this circle, so my big section tool, click on the circle, and I could go copy and paste. And I could then maybe slightly increase it, move it over. And so we have 2 lines of top stitching. And I could even just reduce this even more, move it into position. And I can maybe have this as 1 point and remove the dash fill, and that creates almost like it's a patch pocket that is attached to the garment. If I didn't, then I would just simply remove it, and this would just be stitched onto the garment. So that's how we'd create a very simple basic pocket. You could even take this line up to that point as well. So that's a nice simple concept, and what I could do is then just simply get my big section tool, click and drag over this whole area and go Object and then Group. And then next I go right click, Transform, Reflect, and then hit Copy and place it onto the opposite side. So depending on what your garment's depending on what your specification or your project is about, you could then simply start to create your pockets, which is great. Same with the collar. So in the last tutorial, we actually created this collar, or a similar collar to this. But there's no reason why, once you already have an existing collar, you can't just simply place it on top of your garment. So here, for example, let's just move it over. Let's bring it to the top. And what I could do is I could even get my small selection tool. I could click on this little corner here, and I could make my collar more dramatic. I can maybe pull it off to the side here, and then obviously just correcting some of those lines. Same with the top stitching. I could drag it to here. Here we go. Let's just change that up as well. And let's take this piece. Let's just transform, reflect it, copy, move it into position, and then I could obviously start to pull these lines out so it matched the style of my collar. There we go. And then once I had that piece, I could then simply delete the existing one. We could delete this panel as well. I could simply get my big section tool, select this one, select the top stitch and the collar. I go transform, reflect, and then copy and move it into position. There we go. I might have to correct this little back line here. That's not a problem. And we could group those. Let's just send it down till we get the button on top. Okay, so these are ways you can actually change your, let's say, assets. So once you've actually created this collar, or once you've created the pocket, or once you've created this one as well, you can then obviously start to scale it. You can make it smaller. You can maybe duplicate it, put one up here, for example. You could then remove this and then place this one on the opposite side, transform, reflect, copy, etc. So it's really easy to start adding design details to your garments, but it's also really handy to have these pockets. If you like this pocket concept, you could always then just copy and paste it into a library of styles that you already have. And maybe possibly what you'd like to do is just join that to there. There we go. We could even, just so it makes a bit more sense, we could even then do that. There we go. So it's good to kind of like keep and create and build up this library of pockets that you can then use time and time again. So once again, these are some of the ones that I've used before or created before. So I simply click and drag this over. Hang on a minute. Let's just copy that, copy and paste it. And I can just drag it onto my garment. So very quickly and easily, we can start to build up these, let's say, we can create lots of different styles using all the assets that we already have. But how do we actually create these assets? Well, I'm going to show you. So you could either A, do what I've just done, which is by drawing them yourself and using obviously various tools that you have in Adobe Illustrator, or if you want to create something a lot more beautiful, so for example like this bow, for example, how on earth would we create that just by hand drawing it? Well, we could try, but if you don't have a reference point or something to like go from, then it's going to make it a little bit difficult and it might not look particularly realistic. I mean, I'm just playing around here, but it's going to take you a bit of time and it might not look that realistic. So the best thing to do is basically go online on the internet and start typing in things that you want to actually start creating. So for example, I have this bow here on the right hand side that I just simply saved from the internet. I'm going to drag it onto this page. Okay, it's very, very big. So let's just zoom out. Let's go to embed, first of all. It's got a big section tool and then we can just reduce the size of it. Holding down shift will constrain its proportions. If you don't want to constrain its proportions, then obviously don't hold shift and you can make it any shape or size you want. And then, let's zoom in. I'm going to go object and then lock selection. So I can't edit it or play with it. And now with my pen tool, we can zoom in and luckily I can see some of the details here. Black is not the best color because it hides a lot of detail, but we can see it enough. So I'm just going to simply, like in the last tutorial with our hand-drawn sketches, I'm just going to simply map or trace this out all the way around. In fact, possibly this is better to do this in white or in a, let's say, a different color so we can actually see what we're drawing here. There we go. Okay, so let's make all of this one. We can give this a fill as well. Actually, let's remove the fill because we can actually trace it. Let's click. And so we're just basically using real life objects and trace them in Adobe Illustrator to create really realistic and beautiful, let's say, illustrations. And I'm not going to draw the opposite side either. I just want to give you a bit of an idea of how you might do this. And so each time that you do this, you could then essentially save it as an item or as an element, and that way you can add it to any of your illustrations in the future. So you're slowly building up this really fun, cool library. Okay, like this, for example. And maybe you'd have one there as well, and possibly there'd be one here, for example. So just to give you an idea of how you would create it, very, very simple stuff. And then, for example, you could then group that, and they could transform, reflect it, copy, off to the other side, and then obviously we'd do our centerpiece as well. So let's just go. I'm doing this very, very quickly, but it's just to give you a bit of an idea. And then here we'd have that line that kind of like comes in like this, and like that. And maybe the opposite way around here as well. Let's make these 0.5. Let's make this 2. Let's give it a fill. Let's group it, and then we can just simply delete the existing image, and now we have this lovely bow that we can add to our library. And you saw how quick that potentially is to do. So obviously the faster you are at Illustrator, the better you're going to be, or the quicker this is going to be. And let's just add a color to it. Same for this one, let's add a color. Group, and then we can just resize it. We can even change the proportions of it as much as we like. And that's another bow concept. And obviously the more lines you add to it, the better it's going to be, or the more sort of like detailing you add to it, the better it's going to be. But always make sure that it's consistent. So the lines that we have here, they're not 2, so let's just make sure that they are 2. There we go. And so this is basically how we do it. And so what else have I got? So I've got a tie here. I could bring in a tie, and then I could basically use that. So just embed it. And I could then basically create my tie concept by doing exactly the same thing. And once again, I'm not going to show you this necessarily because the concept is there, but it's all about just basically tracing these assets off. And then you can add them to your garments very simply just by dragging and dropping. Maybe that's not the best particular style for it, but it gives you the idea that you can, once you have your library, start adding. But the one thing that is really, really important, I would say, is zips. So I've actually found a zip online. Let's hit embed. Let's just zoom in. And what I'm going to do is I want to try and mimic this, but I also want to have my zip. I want to turn my zip into a brush. I'm going to show you how to do this very quickly. So let's just go to, I want to try and create this zip, the zip teeth concept. So I'm going to just get my square tool. I'm going to drag just over that little section there. If we zoom in, we should be able to also just, there we go. If we click those little endpoints, so these, once you select it with your big selection tool, you should get those little endpoints, these little attributes. There we go. I can then copy and paste. I'm just going to do 2 of these. I'm going to make them slightly further apart. And let's just make these black. Click OK. And then what I'll do is I am going to, let's zoom in. Sorry, zoomed in a bit too much there. Actually, I'm going to take these pieces here. Let's copy that. Let's paste it down below. Okay, so this is what I want to basically duplicate. Now what I could do is just simply copy and paste and add them in. But this is going to take me forever and, you know, whatever length of zip I want. So I'm going to turn them into a brush, which is really, really handy. Just means that I can then dictate how long I want my zip to be, and it does it automatically. So I'm going to go to my brushes palette here. Just going to open that up. I'm just going to create a square box around these. Let's go to line. Let's take this down to 0. So now as you can see, I've got my box. Now this is almost like my duplicate. So you see I've got a tiny little spacing here. So essentially from here to here is where this is going to tile when I add it to a brush. So let's just simply click and drag. I'm then going to go to my brushes palette. I'm then going to drag it into my brushes palette and click art brush. OK. And then we're going to go along this direction because I want it to tile, let's say, along the horizontal. And I could call this zip teeth 1. Click OK. And then if I go to my pen tool, I can then simply click and create a line, click create a line, then go to my brushes tool. And there, if I click on it, you can see it has basically duplicated that. But the one great thing about doing this as well is if I go to my pen tool and I click a curved line, so maybe a curved zip, which isn't particularly practical, but it just shows you how the brush works. And then it obviously creates that curvy zip. So that's how we kind of create a zip using the brush tool. But also if I wanted to, let's say, add this style of zipper head to it, it's really simple. So I get an image offline. And I'm just simply going to trace this. I've done this before, so I'm just going to speed up this process, and then when we finish, we can then add it to our zip. Let's X or let's copy or cut that, and then let's just paste it in again. I can then rotate it. I can then also scale it down. And let's just place this over on top of my zip, like so. Maybe make it a little bit smaller if you want to. And you can just grab these 2, and then go to your, vertical, horizontal align center, group them, and now we have a zip, which we could then basically put on our garment. So for example, we could then just simply, let's say, remove some of these elements. There we go, we can remove this, we can get rid of the buttons. There we go, and I can put my zip in here, for example. So it's a very, very big zip, that's fine. So we can just simply scale it down until it looks a bit more appropriate. So you could put it here, and then we could also add some bits and pieces to this to make it look like it's an actual zip placket. Okay, so there's all different ways you can add design details, but once you've created that zip, you can then use it on all of your other different, let's say, illustrations. So for example, if we want a zip pocket, I could just simply, let's copy and paste this. We could then rotate it around like this. Move it off to the side. We could then maybe get a square or a box, click and drag to here. I could then take this point, click and drag it in so it meets or matches. Add another little box here. Let's make that 0.35. We can make this 1. Let's fill this. And I could place this here. That's a little bit too thick. Let's make that 1 or even 0.5. And I could even add some stitching. So it's almost like an appliqued zip. I mean, literally, there are thousands of different things you can do, and I'm obviously just doing a very small amount, but it's just to give you an idea of what you can do and how you might do it. So this, for example, if you like this, you could simply just select the whole thing, copy, paste it off, and then put it in your library for use later. You could even get your small selection tool, click on this bottom edge and drag it down, and do this, and then maybe turn it into a pocket. Maybe add some more top stitching. So once you've got assets, you can then obviously create hundreds of more using the same asset, and then obviously group that and then save that to your library. Okay, also when it comes to these pockets, for example, so I went online and I typed in, what was it, pocket vector, and one of these images basically popped up. And so someone else has created these pockets, which is awesome, and I think they're possibly free to download, but at the same time, I could possibly create my own using this as a template. So let's just go Object and then Lock Selection. And so now all I do is simply get my pen tool, and I could just now simply point, click, click. Let's go to here, and I'm just tracing this pocket off. And it might not be the pocket that you want, but you might want to adapt it ever so slightly. And what I do is actually, let's click on this, and let's go to transparency. Let's make this 30%. So then you should be able to see what it is that we're actually drafting. Here we go. So now we can put in our pockets. Let's curve that line ever so slightly. Maybe move that into the center. And we could put a box in here as well. And let's go to our line tool. Let's draw a line. We can make this 0.5, and we can make it a dashed line. Oops. Hang on. Let's change that to be 2 and 1.5. There we go. Let's click and drag that over. Same here. We could do this and this and this. I'm just building up these details, just using my pen tool, and obviously various different widths of line. So once again, it's really important to stick with your line width. So obviously if there's anything that's sort of like an outside edge, you want to have it like maybe 1.5 or 2. Same with this, because this is probably appliqued on, you want to have it about 1.52. And then obviously your top stitching, you'd have it about 0.5, and it'd be dashed. And that just basically goes a long way when it comes to creating styles that look realistic or have, let's say, depth. And I could then just simply take these two, right click, transform, reflect, and then just copy. Unfortunately, that took the image as well. Let's just drag that across. Great. And we could then do this one as well. So I'm just simply showing you how quick and easy it is to create these concepts. And you can get images offline, you can trace them, you can create your own. But once again, always make sure that you keep them in your library so that you can use them time and time again, or you can maybe try and adapt them. So we could then add a fill to this. There we go. And you could even get a button. So for example, we have a button from, what is it, our shirt here. Zoom in. So I created this before. I'm just going to copy it. I'm going to take it over. I'm going to paste it in, and then we could put our little button there. Perfect. And I could just give that button a fill, to be fair. Better. Okay, so this is just simply how you can start to create pockets. Then when I had that finished, I could go select the whole thing with your big section tool, go object and then group, and then copy and paste. And I could just simply place that on my garment anywhere. There we go. Maybe take these lines down a little bit just to kind of like coincide with the document. So let's make it 1. This could be 1, etc. These could be like less, not 0.5. Okay, we can even decrease the size of this. We can also rotate it. We can do whatever we want with it. But once you have it, put it in your library and you can use it over and over and over again. So what else do we have here? Let's have a look. We have fringing, we have other bits and pieces. But essentially, that's the whole point of it. That's it. There's not much really more to talk about. It's just all a case of you can use imagery online, or you can kind of create your own, and then when you have done that, you can just simply save it into your document. I mean, same with belts, for example. We have some belts here. So what I could do is let's go to our illustration. Let's go to something with an actual waistline. So this garment, for example, this has a waist. Let's copy that. Oops. Okay, hang on. Let's lock that down. Let's group that and move it off. Let's paste this in. Okay, so she actually has a waistline here. So I can actually add a belt to this if I wanted to. So let's add a simple, let's say, leather belt. So I could just get my square tool. I could simply click and drag across this whole item here. Let's then go to my belt buckle. Let's copy it. Let's paste it in. You could add it here, for example. Let's then make that line a little bit higher up. And here as well. Let's fill this. And we have to do some jiggery pokery here. There we go. And then you could have a piece click from here. Let's go to this, and then maybe that, and that. Take it up to the top. We could then send it back through the layers. There we go. This isn't a brilliant example of a belt because I have not actually traced it from online. It might be easier to go online and find something that looks similar and then obviously trace that, which you could then add to your illustration. Okay, so that would be a belt, for example. And if you wanted to, you could even curve this. So let's put a point in the center and a point in the center here. Let's take these two up, like that. Take these two up, like that. And then got a convert anchor point tool and just drag this out. Drag this out. Can move this in. So it's all just about playing around and experimenting. So that would be a belt. And we could then, as I said, once again, we could just simply grab these pieces, group them, copy, paste, stick it in our library, and then we can add that to any other style. So maybe I could put it on this one. I could just simply make it much larger. And there we have a belt added to that style. It's not a particularly great style to add a belt to, but it just shows that you can start to move these around, resize them, change them, and add them to different things. These ones, for example, this belt here, so let's copy and paste this. Oops. So if I paste this in, as you can see, I basically found this online. I just traced it off, and I then just resized it to fit my waistline. And this could be applied to any garment. It could even be applied to, let's say, the sleeve. I'm just playing around here. I mean, I don't know how viable this would be, or if you'd even want that, but it just goes to show that you can kind of like resize these, play around them to then be added in different places. Okay, maybe it would be like a cuff detail. So it just shows you how quickly you can actually start to create these concepts. You can even rotate it once you already have the artworks. There's one thing to mention though. So when you're scaling and resizing these, as you can see, all the lines actually scale and resize with it. So what you'd ideally want to do is then go back in, select the outlines of these, like so, and then try and make them the same size as the actual, your spec or specification illustration. Take all these lines as well, and make these the same line width as, let's say, your specification illustration. Like that, and let's remove the dash. There we go. So it looks a bit more like it's actually meant to be on that garment. But there's another option as well. So instead of actually changing the line, so if you have a belt that's this size, but you want to increase it, so if I were to now place this here, and then I increased it, you see my lines are becoming really, really large and ungainly, and I don't actually want that to happen. So if you want to have something really small like this, and you want to make it larger, just simply go Transform, Scale, and then here just say, do not scale strokes and effects. Click OK, and now when you increase the size of it, it will increase the size of the actual asset, but it won't increase the size of the lines. So now, as you can see, it's correct. So if I was to then drag it off to this bit here, and then rescale it, because I've got that option, basically when I scale it, the lines don't change, you can see that it maintains the same line width as the opposite one, which is really handy. Okay, so that's that. So essentially, the whole point or reason why we're actually doing this is because now we've gone through the whole stages of our product. So we created first of all the silhouettes, then we did the details on the silhouettes, then we started creating the sleeves. Now we've done the design details. Now we have the opportunity where we can actually start to piece all of these bits and pieces together to create hundreds of different designs very, very quickly and very easily just by using these or using all these different assets. So let's just get rid of some of these, for example. Get rid of that as well. We can place all these down here. We don't need this anymore. Get rid of that. Get rid of this as well. Okay, so let's, for example, so see, these are some of the ones that I've created before. Let's just have a look. Let's just pick up a style. What shall we use? Okay, let's take this shirt block. It's already got stuff on it, but at the same time, we can remove that and then start to add pockets and sleeves how we want. So first of all this is grouped. I'm just going to ungroup it. I'm going to remove the collar that I originally placed on it. I'm going to remove these pockets that I didn't actually have, which are on it, but I placed on there originally. We can just sort that out as well. Let's get rid of that. We can also get rid of this. So I'm just basically going to build this from a silhouette. So this is the silhouette of our shirt, for example. We can join these. Oops, let's do that as well. So I'm going to make a whole bunch of different designs using this one silhouette. Oops. Let's get rid of you. Okay, so this is my collar. Let's get a bunch of sleeves that I like. I quite like this sleeve concept. Copy. So we'll paste this in. I also quite like, where is it? This little cap sleeve concept's quite nice. So let's paste that in as well. Let's also take, this is quite fun, copy. Let's paste that in. This is my collar. I'm going to make a few different variations on this collar as well. So, first of all, this is our block. And we're also going to remove, there we go. Okay, so this is our basic block for the shirt. It's got no sleeves, no collar, no nothing. It's just a very, very simple block. Let's just place it down here. So now we created our sleeves before in part, the existing part of this tutorial. And I can now add my sleeves. I can then also add this collar in, like this for example. And maybe I can add some other details, but maybe I want to change the shape of this collar. Okay, so let's make it a really flamboyant, very, very large collar. And let's give it some really interesting, let's say, top stitching details, like this. I'm just simply clicking and dragging. There we go. I could maybe even do like a little circle in here perhaps. You know, whatever you want. This is just top stitching detail that you can add. Maybe I want an asymmetric collar. Maybe I want one side low and one side high, and maybe I want this circle detail there as well. It's just a case of simply creating it just by drawing it. Lovely. I could even now start to put on, let's say, like a yoke panel on the front. So let's put on our yoke panel. We could have some top stitching on this. Maybe on the opposite side I could have it asymmetric, so we're going to go from this point down to here. Great. And we could also add some pockets to this. So let's have a look what we have in our pocket selection. We have this one and we also have this one. Let's copy. Let's paste this in. Let's just chuck this one here, and we will have this one here as well. Maybe we'll have that slightly slanted. This is a absolutely mad design, but still, it just shows you what you can do. So this would be style 1. Place that there. Let's take the body and start again. Let's also take this collar. And maybe I want it to be sort of like a short button style. Let's remove these. I could even, so on my bodice, I could remove these dart lines. I could then, let's say, make it a little bit straight. I could even make it long line as well, like so. When it comes to the collar, we could even pull this in. We could pull this in as well, make it really quite interesting. There you go. Not sure what's happening here, but we're just doing it for the sake of doing it. There we go. Lovely. Let's add another top stitch line here. Okay, there we go. It's not beautiful, but we're going to use it anyway. Yeah, that'll do. And then next, let's get some pockets that I've already created. Okay, this is quite a fun pocket. Let's copy and paste it. I'm going to chuck it onto my garment. I could maybe then angle that. I could then perhaps, let's say, add a point here. I could take that out to there. Add a point here, take that in. Add that point there. Okay, so we're kind of getting there. And I could transfer that off to the opposite side. Or for example, if I want to have this body shape on the opposite side, let's maybe move this out. There we go. I could then just simply let's snip, and then here we're going to snip at the top, remove this side completely. Let's remove that. Let's then go transform, reflect, and I'm going to copy it off to the opposite side. Let's move that across. Perfect. Let's then average these. Join. Take this pocket, transform, reflect, copy, move it off to the opposite side. And what else can we add to this? Okay, we can even give this a bow detail or a waist high detail. Click and drag that up, make it the same size as our actual product. And we could maybe even make these longer. Pull these right down to here, for example. We might have to go in and then obviously adjust and play around with bits and pieces like this and like this. But it just shows you how quickly you can actually start to create these styles. Really quite eccentric styles. And maybe here, okay, so let's have these sleeves. That's great. Let's chuck that in behind. Let's move this up. Let's move it off to the side. Let's take this one. Move it up, move it off to the side. There we go. Group. And you know what, maybe the next one we're going to do, I actually quite like this, but at the same time what I want to do is maybe open this collar up a little bit. So I'm going to take all these points, just going to move that right out. I know it looks weird now, but it won't do. Well, I say that, it might. So I have a really wide collar. And let's start to clean this up a little bit. So let's pull this in here. There we go. Let's remove that top stitching line because I can correct it later. Let's remove this as well. Let's remove that point. Let's take this out. Let's clean this up a little bit. Clean this up a little bit. Move that point down again because it's a little bit too short for the back piece. Okay, that's, to be fair, that's not a very good color. So what I could do is I can maybe take this side, which I prefer the most. Let's go transform and then reflect. And then we're going to copy it. I'm going to stick it over to this side. There we go. Let's move that in. There we go. It's a little bit better. Okay, so you see how quickly we changed that style. Really, really very easily. I could even change the collar even more dramatically. You know, so there's all different kind of things you can do to change these designs very, very quickly. And they always look very, very clean and beautiful. We could remove the sleeves. Oops, hang on. Sorry, let's ungroup that. We could just remove these sleeves. Not sure why it's not grouped. It was before, but it's not now. But that's okay. We can remove all the individual elements. Let's just pull that in. Okay, so that's a block for this one. Let's group that. Okay, let's go for this sleeve, for example. Copy B. We've actually already done this one before, so maybe it's not a good idea to do it. But still, just shows you how quickly you can change that garment. Maybe we want to add this sleeve. Let's copy it. Let's paste it in, and voila. It's quite a cool coat actually. So it's a really interesting, fun way of actually creating designs. And that's it. So basically, as I said, you can take any of these silhouettes, any of the things that you've created before, and you can then just mix them up and add different bits and pieces to create different styles. Let's copy this sleeve and let's add it to, where is it? Let's add it to this block, for example. And there you go. Okay, it might need a little bit of adjustment, so I'm just going to shrink that in ever so slightly. Same here as well. Oops. And there you have a really rather unusual looking top. Okay, so that's the whole kind of concept of building this library and using and reusing these different assets to create hundreds of different designs very, very quickly. And so once again, we have created this massive document that has got all of these different assets in there. They're all fully editable. You can select different elements of each. You can then, let's say, take this one. You can then add it to a skirt. There's all kinds of different things that you can do, if that makes sense. See? So this document's really handy to have, but you can then obviously build up your own library, and then you can start creating hundreds of different designs. And I'm just continually waffling and going on now, so I'm going to stop. But I hope that was informative. Obviously, we didn't focus much on the tools I used to actually change these over, because obviously we focused on those in the earlier parts of this whole series. But at this point, you should have the tools necessary or the knowledge necessary to be able to do what I've just been doing simply by, selecting, dragging, moving, changing points, etc., all kinds of things. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little, quite simple but fun tutorial. And next we're going to be focusing on the last part of the tutorial, which is where we actually now start to add color and print and texture and fabrics to these wonderful designs, which will then suddenly obviously bring them to life. Okay, so that's part 4 complete. In part 5, I'm going to show you how to add color, texture, fabrics, and even print to your existing specification illustrations. Also, if you have enjoyed this tutorial and you're new to this channel, then please hit the subscribe button below. We've got some amazing content for you coming up that we'd hate for you to miss. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.